to understand the build-ups and the drops, let's use an analogy with the colors. We will start with blue and red and extend it from there to other colors. So the blue color. Blue color means that the frequency distribution or the frequency response in the sound is tilted to the high frequencies, and it is often associated with being high energy or being active. And we take a look at the stereo field, you will often see that the stereo field is utilized very heavily, meaning that we will have very wide and rich high end. And when we look at the effects usage, you will often see very long reverbs and delays, creating this more mashed up sound and diminished dynamic range. And once you understand the blue, it's quite easy to understand red, because it is more or less the contrary of what blue is. When we, for example, take a look at the frequency distribution, you will see that our frequencies are more tilted to the low end, creating this feeling of deep and focused sound. And to contribute that focused deep sound, oftentimes you will see that stereo field is also narrowed down, elements mainly sitting on the mid, and utilizing less of a stereo field. And finally, to create this tight feeling, you will see that very dynamic sound with really short effects tails, like short delays, short decays, and the amount is often really low. And the third color here is actually purple, basically meaning that adding the blue color on top of the red, the frequency distribution in the track is more flattened out. And while we are having maybe very rich high end, we are also having very rich low end and very tight in the meantime, while maybe we are utilizing the stereo field on the high end as well. This will be quite handy, especially in some of the genres. And of course, there are millions of different shades in music. So when we look at the drop, it will never be a blue and the red. It will be always the shades of these two. But understanding the basics here will really help you pinpointing a feeling and going after that feeling. So let's take a look main type of drops and how we can actually illustrate them with these different color schemes. So the first model that we are taking a look at is what is called the delayed drop. So in this type of drop, we will oftentimes start with high energy break and build up part. At the beginning of the break, the track will be quieter, but it will be still more tilted to the high end, and it will gradually get louder. But when we reach the top, we won't jump into the drop, but we will do something that is called fermata and drop down the energy level. And the fermata oftentimes followed by a teller. Teller can be anything. The most popular one at the moment in techno and melodic techno is a playing short lead sound to hint how the drop will sound. And right after this, we will see oftentimes is the track changes into red, meaning that we will focus on more to the mids and we try to use a tighter sound. And the main reason this is called a delayed drop is the most energetic part of the drop is actually comes way later than the original drop that we anticipated. And this whole drop structure is very popular at the moment, especially in melodic techno and mainstream peak time techno. Because in this structure, you can actually have very long breaks and build up for a really long time. And then you can use the fermata to reset your track. And using teller as a big lead sound creates a really positive reaction from the crowd. And then you can reset your track back again, reach a second drop later on. And when you're about the end of the track, everybody will be extremely happy and feel erotic. So the first example is one of my own track. I picked this one because this one has a very clear structure and it makes it extremely easy to understand. So the main idea here is reaching up to a climax and then giving a small break and dropping it to the red part, very bass heavy and focused part. So take a listen how it sounds. The main difference in this track, I will say that rather than having a linear increase in the high end, we have more like a wavy increase. This is something that I personally like to do a lot. It's easier to see here in the modulation. So I'm basically automating the cutoff all the time. So while we are increasing it like it up and down, giving this a bit more interesting. In this type of drop structure, the common technique here, having something like a shimmer or the big reverb and sending more and more elements to build up all these noises or the ambience in it. First, I will start with the pads. I am, for example, automating the frequency, so I'm opening up my pads more and more, so they get brighter, hence getting bluer and bluer, like here. So they open up more and more, delivering more of that shimmer type of sound or brighter sound. And the second thing that you will realize actually in the mixer here, I'm sending more and more to the shimmer. Shimmer being this very bright reverb sound. So if I play here and just play the shimmer so you can hear how the loudness increases with the shimmer. And here you also see that I'm sending, for example, this noise sound to the shimmer. So shimmer sounds like this. And other very common technique is actually automating the volume levels of the elements that you want to get brighter and louder. Here in this case, I'm automating the loudness level of the pad sound. And another typical thing is actually boosting the high end with EQs. The things that I would suggest avoiding it using the very bright risers or very big hit type of sound. So if I take a look at, for example, all those FX sounds, you will see that it's a very few sound here and there. I will hold the span right before the drop and right after the drop. So actually you can see this everything that we were talking about. I will point out again on the span, but let's take a look right before the break. Frequency response is tilted to the high end, so we are like lower here and more on the high end. It doesn't really need to be super high end here, but the main tilt is going to the high end. And the other thing that is important here is actually, if you take a look at the correlation meter, is we are mostly going around 0 to 0.5. That means that we are having pretty stereo sound here. But now take a look what happens right where the drop hits. So let's take a look. So this is exactly the opposite version now. You can see the loudest part is actually the low end, basically kick and bass. And the other part of the sound is much less louder compared to low end. Now let's switch to one of my favorite artists, Mind Against. So you can also see a little bit how they did in their track. And that track that I'm looking for is pretty special. So take a look. You will see that in one of the drops, there is a break in between right before the drop, making everything a bit darker. And there's another version where they don't put that break and it makes the drop much more brighter and much more climactic or closer to drop style number 2. So I will start with the one that has a fermata and the teller. according to my statistics, 45% of the people who are watching the videos actually haven't subscribed to the channel. So if you are here more than 2-3 times and if you feel like these tutorials are adding something to you, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I will try to make really cool community events when we reach the 100k. Like maybe we can convince one of the community favorite artists to give us the track for a remix competition, and there will be more hardware and software synthesizer giveaway, the gear giveaway. So let's go back and finish this tutorial now. Isn't this beautiful? And this kind of more or less follows exactly the same structure. We are at the drop style number 1. We start with this kind of a bit yellowish beginning, and then we return into the blue, making it really bright and high end. We give a small pause, and then we give a teller, and then we continue with the lead sound right in the drop. And if you take a look at everything that we've done, you will see exactly the same idea. We will have these ARP sounds getting brighter and brighter, opening up more, sending door big hole reverb, big reverbs more and more, building up this very organic ambience. The biggest difference here is actually we are also utilizing a little bit noise and a bit riser as well, right here. But it's not something that is taking over, it's more like filling up the background a little bit, and we are again sending exactly the same noise to the shimmer reverb or the big reverb as well, so that noise even blends in with the other sounds, so it also kind of glues with everything a bit more. Once we have done this, I will jump back to the second one, but first we go back to the whiteboard and talk about the drop theory number 2 and the style number 2, so that we understand that part and jump right back afterwards. And the second drop style is especially popular in the more like mainstream genres, like progressive house, future house, even in the pop music as well. The main reason is that those styles oftentimes have radio edits, and they don't need to really aim for long tracks, meaning that they can deliver the euphoric point in the track earlier compared to the other genres. The main difference here is actually you again start oftentimes with the blue part and lead straight into the purple. Occasionally you may also have a teller or a fermata right around here. The main advantage of this style is actually right in the drop, because we are dropping into the purple, meaning that we are absolutely dropping the highest energy part of the track. It really creates a point of euphoria, which is something that you would like to really have, for example, if you are playing a track in the festival. Yeah, now we understand how the second style works. We are still looking at the Mind Against remix track here, and the main difference here is we took away the break and the teller. And on top of that, because we don't have that small pause, now we have to kind of extend those noises into the drop sound. So we have to make them continue a little bit, otherwise it will be too awkward, because all these sounds disappear straight ahead on the drop. It will give much less energy. And together, actually, they sound like this now. Now you can argue that this is not really 100% the second style, because we are actually still dropping into the kind of more orange color rather than dropping into the purple. That's 100% true. I want to show you because you can see that you don't need to really 100% follow the rules or the techniques. You can blend them together to create your own sound. But now let's take a look at the more obvious option, and this time we are taking a look at the track from Jeremy Olander, which is one of my favorite artists, The Master. So let's take a look. As you can see, right before the drop, everything was more high-end tilted, and once we were in the drop, overall frequency response was much more flattened. And this is a very typical thing of the purple drop. And in this style, actually, you will see that it is much richer with the noises and the effects and risers and so on. So you actually don't mind using extra risers or the extra noises, because in that you want to create this like high energy euphoric moment. And sometimes it is not enough to use just effects to give that amount of energy. It is possible, but it may take much more longer time. And I want to do the exact same thing that we did before. Right before the drop and after the drop, we are gonna freeze the span and take a look at the frequency response and overall correlation as well. One more time. So as you can see, we really don't have much low end, and then we have a tilt going to the high end more, so giving this kind of end of preparation and energy even before the drop. And once we hit the drop, we will flatten that curve out. And now we can see this kind of very famous reverse bell shape, right? We have this kind of a bit resonant sound. It depends a little bit on the moment that we freeze out. If we wait a little bit, it will be disappear. But anyway, we will see this kind of reverse bell shape sound, and which means that oftentimes fully kind of more flattened, rich progressive house frequency distribution, I will say. And this is a very typical, right? And at the moment here, we will feel very energy, we want to dance more. By the way, I can already see people typing on the comments and telling me that they want to see full tutorial on these tracks. No worries, I will make a full tutorial both on Mind Against and Jeremy Olander, but it is most likely be on my second channel, Electronic Music Insider. I moved all this type of laid back genre tutorials there, so that is another reason why you should go there and click that subscribe button now. I will put the link in the description below, also pin a comment so that you can find it easily. But this was the more common approach to the drop for the more like a purple style drop, right? And which brings us to the third one. So let's go back to the whiteboard. Once you understand the concept of blue, red and purple, you can create your own hybrid versions. And now we go back to much darker and deeper, much more underground style techno. And in this style, you don't see actually this type of big drops. You will see more like a very driving, very strong percussive drives to give this kind of a lot of warehouse feeling. And because of that, you definitely see that there's no blue here and there's no red here neither, and there's no purple. So colors are much more closer to each other, meaning that the drops and the breaks are not really that separate from each other. So let's take a listen first how it sounds, and let's analyze afterwards one more time. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community where you can find hundreds of thousands of different inspiring classes. For example, at the moment I am taking Premiere Pro classes and I am taking Photoshop classes, and in the meantime I'm taking a look at the cinematography and lighting and so on, so that I can create a bit more entertaining and fun videos on YouTube and improve my YouTube game. Probably you have already noticed that. And if you wonder why Skillshare and not YouTube tutorial, first reason and the most important reason is that in Skillshare you will have the lessons structured, and in the meantime you will also find all the related documentation together with the video as well. And the other reason, of course, when you are focusing on learning, you don't want to have the ads, and in Skillshare you can have the ad-free experience. And if you want to take a look and try it yourself, you will find a link below in the description, and the first 1,000 people who clicks the link will get the 3 months free access to the Skillshare. So it's a perfect opportunity to try it yourself and see how it works. But now let's go back to our tutorial. Now, why am I showing this one? The reason that I'm showing this one is that you actually be really careful about taking all this theory and applying to your track before really understanding the dynamics of the genre. And there's a reason I want to show you, because the drops can be much more different than what you hear in between genres, but it also means that you can learn a lot from it. For example, while we are using a similar style, this is exactly the same reverse cymbal sound that we used in the progressive house track. But in this case, for example, here we are tuning it down all the way down to create this kind of more deeper atmospheric ambience. If I play it, the main reason it sounds much more deeper and darker is that it's just tuned it down, meaning that we have just like a sound, and then we cut it off with the EQ and put a lot of reverb on top of that. And what does that mean? This means that while I said that the genres will be different, the techniques are more or less still the same. So if you want to add a bit of effects, but effects that fits to your genre, you can still use that reverse cymbal sound, but you have to make it fitting to the style that you are going for, like this. And if you take a look at the span, main theory here is once we are having this break sound, we want the people feel that they are sitting right in front of the sunrise in the morning after the rave, hence giving this mid-rich, very heavy, very stereo ambient sound. Again, take a look at here. Very rich on the stereo and very rich on the pad sound, and the moment the drop hits back, we remind everybody that we are in the rave. We are having this very low and heavy sound. Meaning that now we can go dance one more time before we go back to home. So the main takeaway from this tutorial is that try to break down those different type of colors and think about the colors while you are creating your next drop. What I'm suggesting, for example, think about the feeling, because if there's one sentence that you remember from this tutorial, remember this: the feelings eats techniques or craftsmanships as a breakfast.